talking about? Okay, 4 and 7. Number 4, explain how the term deus ex machina could be used to refer to the resolution of the war. Okay, let me first define deus ex machina. I don't know if we talked about it back in first semester or not, but that's a Latin phrase that literally means God in the machine. And in literary studies, we use it to explain things that are unexplained and don't get explained in the text. So deus ex machina means that God intervened, basically. So if you've ever seen read a story where some weird stuff is happening and then at the end, oh, he woke up. Well, that's a cheap way out of a narrative. And in a way, deus ex machina is a cheap way out because it just says, oh, God solved that problem. And in this scene, Deus Ex Machina applies because here we thought there's going to be this huge embroiled battle once all of the Venetian soldiers got to Cyprus, but they all drowned in a storm. All the Venetians make it to Cyprus. It's the Turks that all of their ships sort of flounder and get shipwrecked, and so there's no war. So boom, God just took care of that. And now the play is about a much more sinister war in some ways, and a battle that most of the characters don't even know that they're embroiled in until it's too late at the end. So Shakespeare kind of like just says, oh, let's just get rid of the war. I decided, boom, I decided against the war. Let's just have them all drown. And now we can do this interplay between this evil character of Iago trying to get his revenge. So that's what we mean by Deus Ex Machina. 7, why does Iago reveal Rodrigo's love for Desdemona to Cassio? In the scene, that doesn't really that doesn't play a big part, but there are certain things Iago is laying down that are going to reap benefits for him later. He's sort of a long game player. So when Iago starts to think, well, I need to corrupt not just Othello and not just Othello and Cassio, but also Desdemona, he makes it clear that Cassio has to go and ask Desdemona to intercede for him on the part of um, of him getting back into his position with Othello. He's been fired basically from his job, and Iago suggests to him that he go and tell Desdemona that he's so sorry, and will you please go and talk to Othello for me to get my job back, which seems like a logical thing to do. And even Cassio says, well, you've given me good advice, I think I'll do that. But he also tells Cassio about Rodrigo's love for Desdemona, just to make sure that Cassio understands that Desdemona is, you know, appealing to others, and that, to highlight her focus on her husband and away from the fact that it looks to others like Cassio and Desdemona might have something going on, because they're always whispering and chit-chatting and that sort of thing because of his close nature to her husband. Are there any others? Scene 2, I think, is pretty straightforward. It's not very long either. So scene 3 is where a lot happens action-wise and also plotting-wise. So is there anything from scene 3 that you want me to discuss? The quotations, there are 3 different quotations there. 12. Okay, I'll tell you what you shall do. Our general's wife is now the general. This is Iago speaking to Cassio, and this is where he puts it in Cassio's head that he should go and ask Desdemona to intercede for him to Othello. He knows that he can't go to Othello and apologize for his behavior. I mean, he got drunk when he wasn't supposed to, and then he stabbed the governor, and Othello stripped him of his position. And so it's not like Othello is going to be super interested in meeting with him. And so Iago tells Cassio, well, the wife is the husband and she has his ear. So why don't you go and beg her to make your case to Othello for reinstating you as his lieutenant? And the reason that Iago does that isn't immediately obvious in Act Two, but I'll give you a little teaser. It's because the more that Desdemona says, "Oh, please, won't you consider Cassio? He was always your friend. Why don't you put him back in his position?" Iago's going to do other things to put some doubts in Othello's mind. And the more that Desdemona goes to her husband and says, "Oh, just give him another chance," it looks like she's favoring him. And it's going to be easy for Othello to jump to the conclusion that the reason she's doing that is because she's in love with him. And so she's making his case because of her feelings for him. And so the question is going to be, does Othello believe what he hears about Desdemona, or does he believe his wife? And she's totally innocent in the whole thing. Cassio's going to come to her and say, "Will you please talk to Othello for me? I'm so sorry about what I did. It was horrific, what I did, but can you please make my case?" And she'll say, "Of course," because they're friends. And so the more that she goes to Othello and insists that Cassio should be reinstated, the more it's going to look to Othello like there's something going on between them. And Iago's setting all of that up behind the scenes, and none of them have any clue that he's doing that because Iago keeps a different face to those characters, right? And like an honest one. So he says, our general's wife is now the general, meaning it's almost the same thing talking to her as it is talking to him. She holds it a vice in her goodness not to do more than she is requested. This broken joint between you and her husband, entreat her to splinter. In other words, entreat means to ask. So beg her, get on her good side, and then maybe she will argue for your case to Othello. And she will, because she's a good person. One of the egregious things about this play, and there are many, is that Desdemona is completely corrupted and she barely even knows it. She doesn't even understand what's happening because she's so kind and innocent and pure. It's all Iago's doing that ruins her. And she never really even knows what was happening. Can't say any more about that because I feel like there's a certain amount of mystery that's good to propel you into your reading of the next part. So I like to leave it with a little bit of a cliffhanger so that you can read ahead and be interested in what's happening in the plot. All right, a few words about dramatic structure, and this one is about the rising action. So Act Two is the rising action. It's where things get more complicated. It's easy to see how that's happening. The complications behind the scenes of Iago trying to set up Cassio and Othello for a downfall. All of that happens. There's also the complication of Cassio stabbing Montano. That could cause political issues too. Their beloved Venetians coming to try to help them in their situation, but then they end up hurting the governor, and that could have some repercussions. And Othello understands that. So there are a lot of elements, and a lot of the intensification of the conflicts come from the things that I was just mentioning about Iago and his machinations. You should be able to trace these different concepts through the play. So I don't know if you want to make a chart or just keep these in mind, because at the end, you should be able to come up with themes for all of them. These are the same 10. They're going to be on every study guide because I think that you should be able to identify them in each one of the acts and how they are developing as concepts in the play. So don't skip that part. Keep an eye on those. And at the end, we should be able to make themes out of them, right? We should be able to say, what lesson do we learn about secrecy or manipulation or jealousy in this play? And we should be able to go back then. And if you've been tracing through those concepts, then you should be able to easily point to, different acts and scenes where those things are relevant. All right, I don't see anything else in the chat. So as far as I know, that's it for Act 2. Is there anything else from Act 2? Maybe something that wasn't on the study guide that you were wondering about from the text? Anything? All right, let me go real quick over to discussion 3. Your post for discussion 3 is due, I meant to go here, is due tomorrow. So do make sure that you take the time to work on that post. Probably you've already started it, but it's the one about the poetry. And so I'm expecting that your response will deal with the 2 poems that you choose, a compare contrast of style, structure, poetic devices, tone, topic, and theme. Those are not suggestions. I'm expecting for you to deal with all of those. You can do them in separate sections if you want to, or whatever works for your response. And then how do these 2 poems demonstrate the qualities of Renaissance poetry? So that's an additional question at the end. I went over this on Tuesday and also last week in the PowerPoint about Renaissance poetry, but are there any questions about the discussion post that's due tomorrow? Okay. I don't see anything in the chat, but you can certainly pop a question in there if something occurs to you. The last thing I want to do before we go today is just give you a little preview. In other materials in this unit, you'll see all these things that I've been putting in here. The one that I want to point to today is essay number 1. So there are 2 papers this term. One is a primary source paper, meaning that you are analyzing the text, just you. It's not a research paper. You don't use outside sources. And the other one is a research paper where you will use outside sources. So the first paper is due, here we are on the 12th, it's due on the 28th. So it's, like 2.5 weeks before that one is due, but it's about Othello. So I just wanted to take a minute to, where did it pop in there? To go over those instructions. You can get the instructions here under other materials, but I also put a link to it here on the calendar so that you can access it either way, really. I just want to talk about that briefly so that you can be thinking about that paper while we're getting to the middle and finishing up Othello next week. Tuesday is Acts 3 and 4, and then Thursday next week is Act 5. And then I think there's a whole nother week. Isn't there a week? Yeah, then there's a whole nother week where we'll be moving on to some other pieces before the paper's due on the 28th. So that gives you some time to draft, touch base with me if you want me to read your drafts and give you feedback and so on. But let's talk a little bit about that essay. The instructions are here on this document. If you can either look here, you can link it. It says that there's a works cited page, but the only thing that should be on the works cited page will be Othello, because the topic is up to you. There are 5 options, and then number 6 is the option of proposing your own topic about Othello. But you'll choose one of these 5, and it's a minimum 4-page, maximum 6-page paper. Kind of small. This one is just you analyzing the text. So you might use other resources to help you understand specific things, but the analysis should be all your own. and it should be you looking at the play and making some observations and supporting those observations in your paper. So topic number 1 is about comparing a couple of sonnets to the soliloquies in Othello. Most of the soliloquies are done by Othello and Iago, just FYI. So your job then would be to go and find some Shakespearean sonnets. They're all online. You can just Google Shakespearean sonnets and all 153 of them will be available to you. And to compare them to some of the monologues and soliloquies in the play. You know, what are some themes that they share? What arguments is Shakespeare making about those emotions or those thematic concepts? Number 2 is about the topic of war in Othello and, you know, him adjusting to life that doesn't involve war. You can maybe make some comparisons here to Beowulf and Gawain, you know, maybe even some heroic qualities. Number 3, the torment of love and the insidiousness of jealousy and mistrust are existential problems we all face. I can talk about existentialism a little maybe next week or something if you like. That is not a concept from Shakespeare's time, but philosophically, it's something that we do think about with literature. So this number 3 is about how does the play make us confront these eternal problems of, you know, love and jealousy, and how does the play help us to confront those elements? Number 4 is about race and otherness because of Othello's different, you know, background compared to the other characters. He's not Venetian born, and he is clearly of African descent, and sometimes that rears its ugly head in racism in the text too. So number 4 is about that element. Number 5 is about evil. How should we understand the problem of evil, suffering, and temptation in Shakespeare's work? The problem is, if there's a God, why does God allow evil to exist? Here's these two that are so totally in love with each other, and even the film does a really good job of demonstrating that. They have, you know, a bond that is clear, and it's just completely undermined by evil in the form of Iago. So what does that evil represent? How does that work in the play? And then number 6 is a topic that you might propose yourself, but I would do that sooner rather than later. That way you have time to work on your own topic. So you could choose any one of those 5. Notice down here that there's a statement about not summarizing. Assume that whoever's reading your paper knows the play. So you're not doing any summary. It's all literary analysis. You're coming up with a theory, a hypothesis, if you will, regarding one of these topics. And then the rest of your paper is about explaining and working out and supporting that hypothesis. So there's a little description there about that. You're not using any outside sources. You won't be quoting any other critics. All the ideas need to be yours and yours alone in this paper. There is a rubric here, so you could click on that if you wanted to. I'll go through that when we get a little closer through the paper, but are there any questions about this first essay? It's okay if some of these topics are a little, you know, vague to you right now, and it's just because we're only in Act 2 of the play. So as we get closer to finishing the play, a lot of these will come into focus a little bit more for you. I just wanted to mention the paper at this point so that it's on your radar. Maybe if you know that these are the topics, then you could be kind of tuning into those as you're reading the last 3 acts of the play and kind of getting ideas for your paper that way. I don't see anything in the chat about the paper. So I guess that's it for today. I came in just about at an hour, including watching the film. I feel like that's pretty good. All right, so for next class, which is Tuesday the 16th, because guess what? Y'all didn't remind me, but I remembered. I don't think we have to have class tomorrow. You can put in the chat and if you want to have class tomorrow, but I already went over essay number 1 today so that you can work tomorrow instead and have some time to work on your discussion and make sure that your post is in good shape. So I don't feel like we have to have class tomorrow. How do y'all feel about that? Is that okay? You could put a thumbs up on your image if it's okay with you. Okay. I don't want you to feel like you're getting, ripped off of your education or anything like that. But okay, I see all the thumbs. But I went a little long today with the essay number 1, just so that I could, kind of give you the extra day. So I know that we have a lot of material. I know there's a lot going on in other courses too. So I'm trying to find the breaks where I can for you. So Acts 3 and 4, that's the longest section that we have of Othello. So, if you already have your discussion done, maybe get started reading Acts 3 and 4, and we'll talk about those on Tuesday. And I don't feel the need to have class tomorrow. So I'll make an official post in Google Classroom, but everything that I would have done tomorrow, I already did today. If something comes up with your discussion post and you want to run it by me or ask me a question, I'll be able to answer it for you tomorrow, but I don't think we have to have class. All right. I'm going to wrap it up then for today, and I will see you on Tuesday the 16th, and we'll talk about Acts 3 and 4 at that time. Okay? Hope you'll have a good weekend. Happy Valentine's Day.